पठामि संस्कृतं नित्यं वदामि संस्कृतं सदा ध्यायामि संस्कृतं सम्यक् वन्दे संस्कृतमातरम् संस्कृतस्य प्रसाराय नैजं सर्वं ददाम्यहम् संस्कृतस्य सदा भक्तो वन्दे संस्कृतमातरम् संस्कृतस्य कृते जीवन् संस्कृतस्य कृते यजन् आत्मानमाहुतं मन्ये वन्दे संस्कृतमातरम् हिन्दुधर्मं समाजं च पवित्रां संस्कृतिं तथा संरक्ष्य ननुकुर्याम विश्वं शान्तिसमन्वितम्।
Sarvebhyaha. I would like to welcome Raghavaha to now introduce our guest speakers and the program for today.
Dhanyavadaha Bhagini. Sarvebhyo namaha. Mama nama Raghavaha. Today I'll be guiding today's panel discussion on celebrating Hindu heritage along with Naisargi Bhagini. As you all may have heard, we're celebrating October as Hindu Heritage Month, and many organizations have worked together and put together some great sessions that will celebrate Hindu heritage and invoke discussions on the topic. Today is definitely no exception to that. Today we have three amazing guest speakers who have all been exposed to some aspect of Hindu culture and tradition outside of India. We'll get to hear from them directly about their own journeys, exploring Hindu heritage, and also understand how they got to where they are today, teaching those practices and sharing their knowledge with others and putting their practice into action. I'd like to call Naisargi Bhagini to help introduce two of our guest speakers, Adriana Bhagini and Vaanii Bhagini.
Namaste, Mama Nama Naisargi. Dhanyavada Raghavaha. I would like to first introduce Vanessa Acevedo, and she also goes by Vaanii Bhagini. Vaanii Mahoday had first learned about Sanskritam in Mexico and was exposed to shlokas in 2008. She quickly developed interest in Sanskrit and Indian culture, and she's been traveling to India every year since 2008. Vaanii Mahoday began studying Sanskritam in 2015, and soon after, she began teaching Sanskritam as a Karyakartri for Samskrita Bharati while also working full-time. Namaste, Bhagini.
Namaste, Bhagini. Dhanyavadaha.
And now I would like to introduce Adriana Salazar. Adriana Bhagini had been collaborating with two international organizations since 2015, International Center for Cultural Studies and Seva International, in which she was responsible for projects in Colombia, working with indigenous people and other ethnic groups. She was exposed to yoga initially around that time, and she has practiced Kundalini Yoga and studied Patanjali Yoga. Her practice of sadhana involves being in touch with her environment, namely the people, their culture, and the nature around her. Namaste, Bhagini. Welcome.
Namaste, Nisaji.
And now I would like to invite Raghavaha to introduce our third guest speaker.
Dhanyavadaha Bhagini. I'd like to introduce Gabriel Mahodaya. Gabriel Martino Mahodaya is an Argentine philosopher and researcher working in the field of ancient philosophy, both Indian and Greek. Gabriel Mahodaya teaches Greek and Sanskrit at the university in Buenos Aires, using a textual-based approach, and has recently started learning Sanskrit as a spoken language. Gabriel Mahodaya also researches the history of yoga, both in antiquity and in contemporary Latin America. Namaste, Mahodaya. Thank you for joining us.
Namaste, Dhanyavad, Raghav.
I'd like to call Naisargi back to the main room. Dhanyavad, Bhagini. So it's my understanding today that we're doing some Q&A with our amazing speakers. Could you walk us through what that process will look like?
Yeah, so today we have a pretty diverse set of speakers who have a lot to say about Hindu heritage. And in light of Hindu Heritage Month, we would love to hear about their experiences and the work that they have done so far. So we would just, me and you, I think we have some questions already set up ready for them, and we can just alternate in asking and hearing what they have to say.
Perfect. Sounds good. Do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. So I have a question for everyone. My question is, how has Hindu heritage made an impact in your life and your work? And perhaps we can have Gabriel Mahodaya speak on it first.
Well, thank you very much, Naisargi. I have been working as a researcher for more than 10 years already in topics related to ancient Indian philosophy and Sanskrit. So Hindu heritage has really made an impact in my work. And I teach Sanskrit at the university, as Raghav said, using a textual approach. So then when I started learning spoken Sanskrit, it was a really very big challenge for me, but it's a very interesting challenge. And I am very happy to be learning Sanskrit. And I am also researching in the topic of modern yoga, which is also very interesting. And I've had some experience with the yoga practice, both here and in India. And this yoga practice has also enriched my life in several different ways. So I think that Hindu heritage has both had an important impact both in my personal life and in my professional activity. Thank you.
Yeah, that's quite amazing to hear how it has kind of pervaded throughout your entire life once you get introduced to Hindu heritage. And thank you for sharing, Mahodaya. And now can we have maybe Vaanii Bhagini also speak on the same question?
Sure. Namaste, Bhagini. Thanks all for giving us this opportunity to share our experiences. Hindu tradition has always teaching us about tolerance, seeking after the truth, seeing the whole world as one family, Vasudeva Kutumbakam. Being in Mexico, I was exposed first about India because I was a student of architecture, and that was my first impression of India, the wonderful architecture. Then after visiting India, I had the opportunity to get more contact with other aspects of the tradition that really have impacted my life. There is a phrase, no, a song in Sanskrit, they say, Samskritena sambhashanam kuru. Samskritena sambhashanam kuru. To change your life, you know, Jivanasya parivartanam kuru. So after knowing Sanskrit, it really changed my experience in India, now in North America, in Canada, my personal life. I become more thanks to Sanskrit, become more concentrated in my things, more organized. And of course, Hindu heritage is that wide that can impact also personal life in the sense of health, in the sense of health and intellectually also. So in that way, it has changed my life. It has impacted me in so many ways that we will talk more during this interview.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing, Vaanii. And you're absolutely right. We'll have more questions for you to kind of dive deep into some of the things that you said.
Thank you so much.
And now, Adriana Vaanii, I would like to propose the same question to you and how Hindu Heritage Month and just in general, how it has impacted your life and your work.
Well, first of all, I'm very honored to be here and to meet you. It's very nice. I'm immensely grateful to have encounter like the Hindu tradition and culture in my life, because it showed me a path. It showed me a way that I was, I suppose, I was looking for. I suppose, but at that time it was not. There was nothing around me that were giving me the clarity, and so I somehow opened up a door for me that since the first day I started to learn, it has been a non-stopping learning process that is very rich, because it combines many things that are very useful and that in a day-to-day life you have to deal and face, and it's a lot of challenges there. It's just basically you realize how fast it is, and that you have tools within you that helps you to manage life in general, and at the same time little by little you see the way you respond to life is started to be like better and better. So in that sense, it has been a very interesting path that I'm very grateful that you exist and that the Hindu culture exists. And of course, till now, I now come to see many similarities that are based in the root of my own culture here in Colombia, and so in that sense, I started to feel even closer to that tradition, from like talking about the roots, like from where everything started, and we can realize that we are sharing many things when we look up, to our ancestors. So yeah.
No, I absolutely resonate with that, Vaanii, and I think it's understood just by knowing that Hinduism is a way of life. It's more than what some people may consider as like a religion or just like a faith or a belief. And what you said, your behavior, your mentality, your just kind of day-to-day practices are all end up being influenced by it, because it's just something that a value that can be translated across everything that we do and just our entire nature. Thank you for sharing, Vaanii. And Raghav, I would like to call Raghav back, and who can probably ask some more questions on Samskritam. From our audience may have noticed that two of our guests today have had close ties and just experience in Samskritam, and maybe Raghav, you can ask some questions on that.
Definitely. Dhanyawadaha, Bhagini. So my first question, I think, will go to Gabriel Mahodaya. It's actually two questions. I have a question and a follow-up. Namaste Mahodaya. Bhavan kutra vasati? And then followed by, how did you get introduced to Sanskritam?
Namaste. Aham Argentina deshe Buenos Aires nagare vasami. And well, I first made contact with Sanskrit through ancient texts, for example, Bhagavad Gita and Yoga Sutram, and I realized that they had been composed in Sanskrit. So I had the interest of learning the language in which these ancient texts had been written. Because as you probably know, when you work with translations, the translation brings with it a very heavy interpretive element. So it's always very interesting to get to know the texts, ancient texts in their original language. So I was able to study Sanskrit at the university, and I joined the university staff, and then I started teaching there as well. But as I said before, we teach and learn Sanskrit using a textual approach. So, well, very recently I started as well learning Sanskrit as a spoken language, and it's very interesting. And in Latin America as well, there is a quite long tradition learning and teaching Sanskrit for more than half a century, yes, so almost a century, in different parts of America, of South America and Latin America, such as Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia, Chile, Brazil, Peru, very important centers, and Argentina as well, very important centers, both in universities and outside universities. They're learning and teaching Sanskrit and also different aspects of Indian culture.
Dhanyawad Mahodaya. I think everyone that starts learning Sanskritam has some interaction with the text. Like you had mentioned, Bhagavad Gita, even when we were reading it the first time, I was reading like an English translation. So I feel like you said, there's interpretation that's brought in, and you want to know what the original says. And I think that curiosity kicks off everyone's interest. I'd also love to hear more, if we have time for at the end, about the history and tradition of Sanskrit in Latin America, and teaching Sanskrit in Latin America, if we have time for that.
Sure.
But Dhanyawad Mahodaya. My second question, I think, goes to Vaanii Bhagini.
Mahodaya.
Bhavatyaha Samskrita Parichayah kada abhavat?
Mahodaya, aham bahu samyak smarami. Aham Mexico deshe asam, aham kinchit Samskritena vadami. Because I like a lot this question. Khatam. Vihi tatra Mexico deshe kasminchit ashrame shlokaha mantraha cha shrutaha maya. Aham shrutavati Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Shatavaram aham chintitavati. Kimartam shatavaram punah vadanti, ucharanam kurvanti. Tat shrutva jhatiti mama manasi vaha prashnaha agataha. Etanam mantranam artaha kaha iti chintitavati. Anantaram aham dirgha kalam Bharatadeshe bahu brahmanam kritavati. Tatra Rajasthantaha Tamil Nadu Paryantam Samskritam Shrutavati Sarvatra. Shlokan Shrutavati Mandireshu. Mama Yatrayaha Arambhe Tasmin Kali Kimapi Nanyatavati. Yada aham Pratamavaram Bharatam Gatavati Kimapi Nanyatavati. Aham chintitavati Bharatadeshi kim chalati iti mama chintanam asit. Tarhi aham chintitavati yadi aham Bharatam samyak abhagantum ichchami Bharatiya Samskritim tarhi maya Samskritam pathaniyam iti. Tatra mama parichayah Mexico deshe asti, anantaram Bharatadeshe, anantaram Canada deshe api. Atra एका वार्षिक संस्कृतसम्मेलनम् आसीत् तत्रापि सम्भाषणं संस्कृतं श्रुतवती भाषणं संस्कृतेन सम्यक् आसीत् तर्हि जिज्ञासा अभवत्
Dhanyawad, Bhagini. No, I think that's super interesting how hearing something even once, hearing a shloka even inspires that curiosity and the drive to go and learn more about the language that it came from and the tradition behind that. I think it's amazing that you've also, as a result of that curiosity, you've traveled to India and learned more and more about Sanskritam until you finally started teaching with where you are in life right now. Dhanyawad, Bhagini.
धन्यवादः
So I know Gabriel Mahodaya and Adriana Bhagini have both explored yoga from different walks of life. Naisargi Bhagini, did you have potentially a question you would like to ask related to yoga?
Yeah, so my first question is to Adriana Bhagini. And I wanted to ask, how are Hindu values reflected in the practice of yoga, and what has been your experience with that?
I would say that like all the most beautiful values that you can see in life, you know, love, respect, like non-violence, ahimsa, you know, all these values that are like within the Hindu culture. Somehow when you are practicing yoga in a very like corresponding manner, you started to absorb and incorporate those values within you, and your body, your mind, like everything kind of absorbs that. So it's kind of like the vibration of those values that are, you know, that are there in the Hindu culture can easily be like arise when you are practicing yoga, and then that as a consequence while you are like facing life, those values are starting to manifest. So I guess it's something like we can explain it in a scientific way. We can explain it in the subtle energy of how everything works with like within our body and minds, and external, like the inner and the outer. But essentially when I have like when I practice yoga, I can see like the benefits like right after the practice. I have perceived the actual practice itself, like in the yoga mat. It's just the training process, but actually yoga starts just right in the first step when you're out of the yoga mat. Yeah, that's when yoga starts. And so that moment, that half an hour practice that you know anyone can do in the yoga mat, it's just the training part that you are, is the cooking part, is the laboratory where you are, you know, mixing the whole ingredients within yourself, and then life starts, and that's, you know, the whole thing started to unfold in a very magical manner, I would say. And so, of course, in all of that, part of the ingredients is the values, you know, those are the consequences, I would say, the values. And I really like that because it comes in a very honest way. You know, it's something that not necessarily comes like by thinking or you know, pushing yourself to be kind or pushing yourself to be non-violence. It's just something that naturally started to manifest. So that's why I find it beautiful.
Yeah, that's absolutely how I see it as well. And what you said about kind of yoga helping you see the world more holistically, and taking the subtle aspect of our lives also into account, so that and then the more that you practice that, when you're not doing yoga, you'll still automatically be in that mindset for you to, like you said, automatically think kind of more in tune with the rest of your environment, and how you behave within that as well. So I think, yeah, it's like you said, it's a great way to kind of heal the rest of your life as well. Once you start that practice, just, getting into it, and just like, I guess the analogy that you had about like just kind of cooking in your mind, definitely it's a process, but it's something that even a little bit of it has an impact once you get it started. Thank you, Vaanii. And I would like to ask the same question to Gabriel Mohodaya, and how his study of yoga, how he sees Hindu values in that, and what his experience has been there.
Well, thank you very much for the question. I started researching in yoga first, trying to put into in relation ancient Greek philosophy with ancient Indian philosophy. And one of the trends of Indian philosophy that I studied is yoga, dharshana, and Samkhya darshana. And they are, of course, very tightly related, yoga and Samkhya. And well, we, for example, wrote a book with a colleague about history of yoga, and it's a short history of yoga, and we try to give a brief explanation of the history of yoga from ancient time to contemporary times, no? Especially in Latin America, regarding the modern times. And when one has the opportunity of studying ancient texts related to yoga and to Hindu Dharma, you have the opportunity of learning the different values. A couple of minutes ago, you were speaking about ahimsa, and well, in the Yoga Sutra, for example, we learn of a lot of other values, such as satya, and other important values. And when we go to texts such as Bhagavad Gita, we also have karma yoga, acting without expecting a definite result from the action, detachment. I think that those are very important values that help us, and that we get to learn when we delve in the texts, ancient texts. And my work has helped me to do this, because I have taught courses in ancient Indian philosophy, and we have research projects as well, and we are helping with this work to introduce yoga and ancient Hindu philosophy to be introduced as a part of academic studies here in our country and in the region. And I would like to add something else, and is that there is a new project called YOLA, which means Yoga in Latin America, and this project has its base in Mexico, in the El Colegio de Mexico. And we've had recently a symposium there at the Colmex, which was dedicated to the study of modern yoga in Latin America. So this helps us not only to know better the phenomenon of modern yoga, but also to try to establish some links between academy and academic study of yoga and practitioners. And it also is an opportunity for us academics to learn more about the practice and the values of Hindu Dharma and yoga practice. Thank you.
Yeah, that sounds like a really interesting initiative. And you said it's called YOLA?
Yes, YOLA.
Okay, that's an interesting name as well. So then how would you say what you said? You mentioned that this particular program that you're also trying to include some sort of research or knowledge into the practice while you're engaging with the academic side. Why would you say that is important to do so?
Well, sometimes the academic study of yoga and the practice of yoga seem to be two separate lines of activities. And I think that it is very interesting, both for academics and for practitioners, to enrich their views with the others' views. No? And it is also a fact that many of the yoga academics are practitioners as well. No? And this happens in academics. Some of us practice some kind of yoga, whether it is asana or meditation or something else, or some do Buddhist practices. No? So it is interesting because we somehow put into relation these things, the practice and the academic point of view about the practice that or other people carry out or we carry out. So I think that it is an interesting situation for many of us.
Yeah, Dhanyawad Mahodaya. And I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I think that is one of the core purposes of Hindu Heritage Month, which is there is definitely the study of Hinduism out there, and we're always trying to kind of eliminate any misinterpretations or just kind of further enrich that knowledge and that study that is currently available at institutions or just in general. But like you said, the lived experiences and of those actually practicing Hinduism is always good to bring that to light, so that the knowledge, meaning the estimate of what we think Hinduism is versus the actual what is happening within Hinduism and the practices, and just kind of bringing those figures and those day-to-day what it means about Hinduism, like that type of lived knowledge together will form a more holistic sense and awareness about that. So I'm sure that is exactly what you mean in how we understand yoga.
Sure, yes, I agree. Thank you.
ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः